Welcome to the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. I'm your host, Suzan Chin-Taylor, CEO and founder of Creative Raven, the firm that helps wastewater industry contractors and manufacturers unlock the power of digital marketing, AI, and PR to boost sales and opportunities. Whether it's through our online marketing and lead generation programs or providing a fully outsourced marketing department, we are passionate about helping businesses in the wastewater and civil infrastructure sectors not just survive, but thrive in today's digital world. Each episode, I'll be bringing you expert tips and strategies to help you grow and succeed. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. We are now continuing our conversation. This is part 2 of our visit with John Soulliere, who was the former director, if I'm getting this right, of the Desert Hot Springs Water and Sanitation District. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but in a nutshell, that's who John was. And we've known each other for many, many years. And in our last episode, you might want to go back and listen if you didn't get a chance to tune in. We were talking about a huge project and undertaking. The city of Desert Hot Springs was, I don't want to say forced, but in a way, yes, in order to protect its very valuable groundwater. And really one of the main things that drove the economy, was the main source of economy for this little town, a poor town sitting in a beautiful resort area, faced with many, many challenges. I used to live nearby because I lived in Palm Springs for many, many years. And they were charged with having to take thousands of homes on septic into the public system. And that was no small feat. And so the last episode, we talked about how to find funding when you're a poor community. And John and his team were really creative in ways that they went about looking under every rock and calling every person that was every potential option. And they were able to get a good portion of the funding that they needed for the project. But then there was still going to be needed a heavy lift from the community. And so what we're going to talk about in this, because I think this is truly evergreen content for anybody facing anything like this, is that now, how do you get the help of the community who's going to have to bear the burden of the other half of those monies that are needed to really complete this project to the point that it needs to be completed? And so with that, John, tell us the story about what you had to do for community buy-in for this septic to sewer project.
Well, I think I mentioned in the last podcast that we already had been doing a significant education push.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't academic, it was awareness. And one of the things we did as part of that was, I think I mentioned, we entered our drinking water into an international tasting competition. Well, the great thing was, I think it was in 1998, right in the middle of all these discussions, it won a gold medal. The best water in the world. Largest international tasting competition of its kind. All of a sudden we realized, wow, we always knew our water was good, but this is phenomenal. And we began to promote the idea of this world-renowned hot water. It already had its brand, but now we had the drinking water, and both needed to be protected. But we didn't stop there. The community's identity and what that water district, it was Mission Springs Water District was the name of the district, what that water district did for PR for the community through elevating both the drinking water as well as the other water that was already known was phenomenal. There was such a community pride that began to emerge through that medal, and then a silver medal, and then a bronze medal, and another gold medal. On and on it goes. I don't know how many they're up to today, but there's quite a few. If you'll remember, I mentioned elevating the value of the product. in order
Right.
for a person being willing to pay the higher price for that product. And that's exactly what we did. Not only was it that everybody else outside of the city, outside of our sphere of influence, was talking about the greatness of this water, people were writing stories on it. We were
Mm.
regularly putting information into the local papers and getting interviews and going on local television channels talking about this water, this special water, the value of this water. And so there was a community pride that began to be attached to it. And with that, people were getting to the point where they were saying, well, if we can afford it, we'll do what it takes to protect it. And that's
Mm.
exactly. Now, this came over years. In this business, I have to tell you, when you're working with the public, you have to be patient. Now, you can say, well, we need it done by then. But guess what? You're not in charge. They're in charge. And that was the first thing we really had to teach some of the old government dogs. Folks, it's not like before Prop 218 where you had to do this a different way. You have to ask the community's permission. You can't just say, hey, we're going to do this unless you say no. Nope. You have to ask permission. But if you think about local government or any government, of the people, by the people, for the people, we're always supposed to be living consciously as government officials, which I was, a government servant, public servant. We lived by permission. The
This is
public
true.
granted us tax dollars. We were supposed to be using those tax dollars for the purpose of which they were given to us. And in fact, Prop 218 really solidified that. You could not use a penny of the proposed dollars or even of your public agency's money to promote the development of assessment district, only to educate. You could not go out and get a high power marketing team and say, hey, let's persuade. You couldn't persuade in meetings using persuasive language. You had to use education. Now, in my mind, at the spearhead of the team that was doing this, I thought, well, wait a minute. If thinking logically, which was rare for me at the time, if you show people the facts and if you lay out a logical case, logical minds are going to go, oh, well, that makes sense. So you don't have to persuade. Education and reason will get through to reasonable people. And I got to tell you, it did more and more. But we always had a pocket of people who were very vocal, knew how to write, knew how to communicate to get in the way. And so he said, okay, for this first assessment district, sort of our pilot, manageable size, maybe 500, 600 properties, we need to find within these the larger community in each neighborhood, we need to find people who were reasonable, who supported what we were trying to do, and let them become the community liaison. Neighbor to neighbor, we called it. Because if I'm the government guy, I'm here to help. Oh, yeah, right. Every time you help, I got to pay a tax. So I realized early on that my voice wasn't going to do it. But you know what? Granny down the street's going to listen to their buddy who they have coffee with, every morning when she's being reasonable. Neighbor to neighbor was the key. And we incorporated
Mm.
people in every small neighborhood to become the representative that would invite us out to hold the barbecue for educating the community. Now, we could pay for the little barbecue because it was just hot dogs on a grill or whatever as part of the education process. And so, but they sponsored it. And we would always say, okay. In fact, we had meetings at the district and we made sure that each meeting was timed as an invitation to these 3 or 4 communities, and the community representative would be at that meeting. And we always gave them time to
Mm.
stand up and say, here's why I think this is important. Here's why I'm supporting this. See, they could say that, I couldn't. And I said, okay, now I'm going to tell you how all this works. I'm going to educate. They promoted, I educate. Pretty cool.
What a great way to go about it.
Yeah. Labor intensive, but it was not only satisfying, we had the district enjoyed such what's the word I want to use? Not disclosure, but
I
transparency.
was going to say just transparency.
It launched a whole different level of transparency for our public agency. We began to have community tours. We began to go out and show people the watershed. We had a bus, and we would take 40 to 50 people once a year and show them all these things. And people were backed up for years wanting to get on that tour. And some of the other districts do that too. But we found with the requirements under Prop 218 of disclosure and transparency that actually helped our agency when it came to rate increases and all those things that are necessary for government entities to continue to properly manage their agencies. This sort of launched a springboard that, hey, more transparency for rational people actually gets them on board because they get it. But when you're just wanting to do things and say, okay, we got to figure out how to cram this down their throat. Let me tell you, you want a war? That's how you start a war, right there with your community. And so we did it completely different. Again, the change in how we were required to do things required us to think out of the box and do things completely different. And it actually elevated us as an agency within the community. We were the most respected agency, even higher than the city at that time in that community. And we had the community's trust. And the elected officials, of course, I'll tell you, staff, you can never control what an elected official is going to say, but we let them know, look, you need to be on the same page. We don't play games. We are forthright, and our boards were excellent. And to this day, the board up there has been excellent as far as I could see of the members who have served on that board because of their overkill almost in wanting to be super transparent. So it was wonderful. So the good thing is we went out for our pilot. I was, of course, in full panic mode because I thought, okay, this is my career too right now, right? If this thing doesn't fly, the hopes and dreams are gone. And what do you know? That thing was over 2/3. We only needed 50%, but it was over 2/3 in favor. And there's a few other things on the financial side that we did for that first district that were amazing. They were some of the most difficult financially community parts of the community. One thing we did is we negotiated with the Environmental Protection Agency, who had a grant program back then for small wastewater projects. And we went to them, we said, thanks for what you gave us to help for the cost of the collection system going in and so forth. That's going to help. I said, here's a problem though. Once the sewer's available, these folks can't afford the connection. They said, well, look, we don't do on-site work. We can't. It's private property. And we said, well, then you're not protecting the water. And we were the first agency in the history of these programs that the EPA ever made a finding to actually contribute a portion for the cost of the on-site work. And when we got that done, let me tell you, that vote was overwhelmingly in favor because now all of a sudden, I mean, I can't tell you, Suzanne, how many people were living up there on a pittance of Social Security, and that was it. And here we are going, oh, well, this is going to cost you $1,200 to abate your septic system after the additional X hundred a month or a year. Oh, by the way, there's also a monthly fee. They just couldn't do it, man.
Yeah, couldn't do it.
But when we made it happen, and it kind of breaks your heart because these people wanted to protect the property or excuse me, the water. They wanted the system. Some of them there were failing septic systems everywhere. That's 10 to 15,000 bucks, man. You got to dig the old one, you open it up, you got to replace the leach field, all these things that are part of the problem with on-site treatment. And these poor folks, I mean, we had people whose septic tanks were utterly failed. We had, just for flair, we had one neighborhood where there was a woman standing in the front yard waving goodbye to her daughter going to work, and her daughter looked in the rearview mirror and the woman was gone because the septic tank had gotten so old and decayed in that front yard that as she was standing there waving goodbye, it collapsed and she went straight into the septic tank. I am not kidding you. It was horrendous. It made the news, I'll tell you. It made the Valley news. And of course, we had to say, well, we're trying. All right. It's up to the
Mhm.
community what they want. But there were cases like that everywhere because a lot of the homes were older. But thankfully, over time, uh, the reasonable people overcame the unreasonable, and they said, "Yeah, we have to do this."
Mhm.
So that was our pilot project. Now, the other piece of this was important is when you're the money stream through grants, federal legislation, state, federal, whatever, you don't get it all at once. It comes year after year at the will of the Congress, at the will of the legislature, or if these grant monies are even available anymore. And so we had to do one other thing that had never been done in an assessment district formation. There was a caveat. We said, if you guys vote yes, and if we aren't able to get the money to match, you will not ever be assessed. We won't build the project. You will not bear the burden of this cost unless we can match it and offset those costs the way we're. In other words, what the dollar amount on that ballot, that's
Right.
it. You cannot exceed that. And they said, oh, well, what happens if you can't do it ever? I said, well, assessment districts, once the vote's in, if we don't build the project in 10 years, it simply goes away. Now, move the dial or the timeline forward quite a ways, and we actually did have an expiration of the first broad assessment district, and we hadn't gotten all the money yet. So I think it was in 2010 or thereabouts, we had to go back out to a couple of portions of that original community. It had grown since then. There were new people in since then. More houses were built since then. And we had to do that all over again. And, this is 15 years later, and I'm not the same guy. I'm going, wait a minute. I don't know if I can handle that again. I got to tell you, we got it done. We got it done. They re-upped it and to date, I think the entire project has finally been built out. There's been wastewater treatment plant expansions. There's been expansions out into North Palm Springs for a regional plant now. The district is getting into tertiary treatment and looking at recharge and all these different things. But the point to all this is, I think the two major takeaways. Number one, it's going to take a lot of work, but you can find the money on the outside if your community is interested first. If your community is not interested in protecting their water and making sure you have modern wastewater treatment, then you're not going to get a look from either the grants that are already in place through the propositions or whatever, or from the legislators. They're going to say, well, okay, yeah, we're concerned, but if your own community is not concerned, what are we supposed to do? And so that's the key. And the second takeaway is transparency is absolutely the rule. And the more transparent you could be about your agency as a whole, when you come back to these issues, these smaller issues that aren't to the full agency, but are another issue, they're gonna believe you. They're going to trust you.
Mhm.
Don't ever betray the public's trust. I don't care. I don't care what egg may have to land on your face. You do not, you let the egg hit you in the face. You eat crow, use whatever you want to use.
Mhm.
But you just suck it up and move on, but you must remain transparent. And again, the reputation of that agency, that city, that region elevated exponentially when we had to do it all different. And we got it done. We got the projects built. We helped people where we could. We went to senior home. We went to the county. We found stuff just for seniors to help them. We found stuff for the impoverished to help them. There were these little tiny pots, and if you put a bunch of little tiny pots together, they add up to a big pot. You
Mhm.
may have 15% of that population that there was only that much money for. You went after it. You worked your tail off, but because you cared about the people and you really believed in the project, you did it. You got it done. And that's really what it was all about. Our board and our team were committed to getting the job done for the people and for the water, which is your charge as a water agency. It's all about that's why you're there. That's why you exist, not just to put water in pipes and send bills, but to protect it as well.
Well, John, I really want to thank you for coming on and these two episodes and really sharing this story and really what I would say a groundbreaking and historical project for that part of Riverside County and
Absolutely.
especially for that little community. I remember driving up into there and every once in a while going to the hot springs, but just the views from up there because it was all kind of like built on this slope. And I
Yeah.
could see why some people who wanted to be a little bit out of the touristy district of Palm Springs were maybe gravitated towards Desert Hot Springs because it was quieter and the views from up on the hill were pretty spectacular of the San Jacinto Mountains and just the valley at large. And so, thank you for your service, your past service to the community and making that happen. And again, sharing your wisdom and the history behind that and how others could, sharing your pearls of wisdom about others can approach something, as large a scale as what you successfully were able to implement. And so, for those of you who tuned in, if you'd like to connect with John, he is on LinkedIn, although he is in retirement. He is open to talking to people, consulting, maybe being on an advisory board. He is an absolute wealth of knowledge on both the water and the wastewater side. And as John and I agree that we don't want to look at drinking water, wastewater. For us and the way we view it, or stormwater, it's not an us and them. It's all one water. And we all have to take care of that one water. And so again, thank you, John. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you're ready to take your marketing to the next level and start increasing sales and opportunities for your business, reach out to us at Creative Raven. We're here to help you thrive in the digital landscape. Visit creativeraven.com or click the link in the show notes below to schedule a call and learn how we can support your growth. If you enjoyed the insights on today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep growing and keep it flowing.